check it out right now and tell me what you think. That's right, Hamster and Gretel. And if you liked Phineas, you'll like this too. Okay, 2 things. 1.
I finally got around to doing. Okay. I'm on. I'm starting with food paper, so it looks like. Boom, 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 boom. Oh wait, now I got the thing from. Oh wait, crap. Wrong thing. This one. You don't need to see that. Ah, damn it! Get back over here. Hello. Okay, I got to make sure. Discord, so I'm getting the yakety tuckety talk stuff. Come on, Discord. Cut through the line. It's Discord. I'm on the hunt. Oh, smell like I'm found. I'm lost and found, and I'm hungry like the wolf. Rounds in the line of Discord and rhyme. I'm on hell on that one. I'm after you. Okay, yeah, Discord set up. Don't you love when a streamer's organized? Good thing I'm not. Oh man. For those who don't know, traditionally when I'm doing the Friday night Brothers Grimm streams, I typically drink beforehand. So, yeah. Okay, microphone array is on the computer. Okay, I'm using that one. Off my feedback. Yep, okay. No, I got myself muted on screen too. Hello? Don't pause me. Hello? Hello? Oh, there we go. I have to check to make sure I'm getting my own audio on the stream. Because I'm just that way. Make sure sound alerts are going.
I got a bad feeling about this.
Hello? Okay, they're going. Cool. Do the tweeting thing. Was twiddly-diddly-deet, 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 tweet, 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 tweet. Okay. And ENV Tuba. As opposed to Angie Tuba, which honestly I think would be hilarious if someone did a tuba streamer. Wolf Story. Okay, get this up here. Copy. Post that. That be posted. Come on, Twitters. Get your tweets going. Thank you. And what do I have a notice? Hello? Okay. Now I can shut the tweets. Toi. Okay. Now I've got my stuff copied. I can go running rampant pasting things. Get it posted on all the pertinent discordants. It's nice and people know I'm on. Okay, one there, Discord server. Everything gets flaggy when I'm trying to do this kind of stuff. Oh, edge of torch. There we go. 2 postings. And 3 postings. And I swear, self-promotion is the thing I'm the worst at, honestly. Cross-promotion, I think. Okay. What did I mention up here? For the egg, found egg, VTuber zone. Okay, I posted that. I think that's the other one on there, but I'm posting it anyway. Okay. Pokemon escaped and I never knew it was here. That is where the Pokemon. Oh. Honestly, don't know where else to post this. So. This off. I think that's it. Down the line, I'm just gonna run. I'm on the hunt after you. Awesome. Oh, smell like a sound. I'm lost and I'm found, and I'm hungry like the wolf. On the line and discord and rhyme. I'm a how and I whine. I'm after you. Okay. Oh, damn! It was a Houndour. Freak! I needed a Houndour. I think. I still think I have a Houndour. Way down there. Okay, do have a Houndour. Cool. Let's see, I've been going down one now. 12 minutes. Of course, most of that was broadcasting. I was out here. Out here in the wild world. Okay. So Streamlabs is working, Cerebot's on. So Cerebot's working, Streamlabs is working, Sound Stream Elements is working, Sound Alerts is working, Pokemon Community Game is working. Haven't seen anything from Nightbot yet. Nightbot's usually the one telling people to do clips. Anyway, we told 15 to start recording. Well, not recording, but reading such stuff. Ouch. Let me get over to my Storyteller screen. Boop. Where am I? Oh crap! I need to change the book. Where is it? There we go. We're doing Grimm tonight. I have not drunk that much. Oh, keep finding the freaking sound effects. Time it's 14 minutes in. Yeah, I started on time. Amazingly enough. No. Am I doing that memory? Despacito. Okay, I've got 65 gig free, so that means I should be able to get all of tonight's recording done. I hope. Okay. Creaky noises. Oh shit, 15. I can't keep that on time. Oh, no, just ambience. So, press keys. Anyway, hello, Discord. Okay. If we're going to have a delay between when I'm saying something and my Discord actually responds and everything on stream. So, Cubs. The first story for tonight is The Three Little Birds. More than 1,000 years ago, there were many minor kings in this country, and one of them lived on the mountain called Kotterberg. He was very fond of hunting, and one day, when he left the castle and went down to the mountain with his huntsmen, he came upon 3 maidens tending their cows. When they saw the king with his men, the oldest pointed at the king and called the other 2. "Hello, hello! If I can't have that man over there, I don't want any at all." Then the second responded from the other side of the mountain and pointed at the fellow walking on the king's right. "Hello, hello! If I can't have that man over there, I don't want any at all." Finally, the youngest pointed at the fellow on the king's left and called out, "Hello, hello! If I can't have that man over there, I don't want any at all." The 2 men were the king's ministers, and the king had heard what the maidens had said. After he returned from the hunt, he summoned the 3 maidens and asked them what they had said the day before on the mountain. They refused to answer, but the king asked the oldest if she would take him for her husband. She said yes, and her 2 sisters also married his 2 ministers, for the maidens were all beautiful and had fine features, especially the queen, who had hair like flax. The 2 sisters didn't bear any children, and once the king had to take a trip, he asked them to stay with the queen and cheer her up, for she was with child. While he was away, she gave birth to a little boy who had a bright red star on it as a birthmark. But the 2 sisters decided to throw the pretty baby boy into the river. After they had thrown him into the water, I think it was the Wesser, a little bird flew up in the air and sang, "Get ready for your death, I'll see what I can do. Get ready for the wraith, red boy, what can that be you?" Yeah. When the 2 sisters heard the song, they feared for their lives and ran off. Later, the king returned home, and they told the queen had given birth to a dog. And the king responded, "That bitch. No. Whatever God does is always fine for the best." What? Understand the guy? However, a fisherman lived by the river, and he fished the little boy out of the river while he was still alive. Since his wife had not given birth to any children, they fed and cared for him. Good people. After a year had passed, the king went on another journey, and the queen gave birth to a second boy during his absence. The 2 wicked sisters took the baby away and threw him in the river too. Then the little bird flew up into the air once more and sang, "Get ready for your death, I'll see what I can do. Get ready for the wreath, red boy, can that be you?" Sounds about better that time. When the king came home, the sisters told him the queen had again given birth to a dog, and he responded as before, "Whatever God does is always for the best." However, the fisherman fetched this baby out of the water too, and fed and cared for him. However, did that. Once again the king went on a journey, and the queen gave birth to a little girl, whom the wicked sisters also threw into the river. Then the little bird flew up in the air once more and sang. Sing along with me. "Get ready for your death, I'll see what I can do. Get ready for the wreath, brave girl, can that be you?" When the king came home, the sisters told him the queen had given birth to a cat. This time the king became so angry that he had his wife thrown into prison, for she was forced to stay for many years. So the king doesn't like cats. Weird. Was he secretly a dog? Maybe that's why it didn't bother him, and the cat just kind of pissed him off. I don't know. In the meantime, the children grew up, and one day the oldest went out fishing with some other boys. But they didn't want him around and said, "You foundling, go on your way." The boy was very upset when he heard that, and he asked his father whether it was true. Then the fisherman told him how he had been fished out one day and found him in the water. The boy then said he wanted to go out and search for his father. The fisherman begged him to remain, but there was no holding him back. At last the fisherman gave in, and the boy went forth. He walked for many days until he came to a large and mighty river, where he found an old woman standing fishing. "Good day, Grandma," said the boy. "Why, thank you kindly." "You'll be fishing here a long time before you catch any fish." "And you'll be searching a long time before you find your father." "Damn. How are you going to get across the river?" "God only knows." Then the old woman picked him up and carried him on her back. Once he was on the other side, he continued his search for the father in a long time, but he couldn't find him. When a year had gone by, the second boy went out looking for his brother. He too came to the river, and the same thing happened to him as with his brother. Now only the daughter was left at home, and she grieved so much for her brothers that finally the fisherman had to let her go too. Soon she came to the large river and said to the old woman, "Good day, Grandma." "Why, thank you kindly." "May God help you with your fishing." When the old woman heard that, she treated the girl in a friendly way. She carried her across the river, gave her a stick, and said, "Now, my daughter, just keep going straight ahead, and you'll come to a big black dog. You must be quiet. Don't be afraid to laugh or stop or look at it. Then will come a large open castle. You must drop the stick on the threshold and go right through the castle and out the other side, where you'll see an old well. A big tree will be growing from that well, but a cage with a bird inside will be hanging on the tree. Take the cage down and get a glass of water from the well. Then carry both things back the same way you came. When you come to the threshold, pick up the stick, and when you come to the dog again, hit it in the face with a stick. But see to it that you don't miss, and then come back here to me." The girl found everything just as the woman had said, and on her way back from the castle she met her two brothers, who had been searching half the world for each other. They went on together to the spot where the old dog was lying. Then she hit it on the face, and it turned into a handsome prince, who accompanied them to the river. The old woman was still standing there, and was happy to see them. She carried all four of them across the river, and then she departed, because now she had been released from a magic spell. The others traveled back to the old fisherman, and they were all glad to be found with each other again. Once inside the house, they hung the bird cage on the wall, but the second son was still restless. So he took a bow and went hunting. When he became tired, he took out his flute and began playing a little tune. The king, who was also out hunting, heard the music and went towards it. When he saw the boy, he said, "Who's given you permission to hunt here?" "Nobody." "Who are your parents?" "I'm the fisherman's son." "But he doesn't have any children. If you think I'm lying, come along with me." The king did so, and asked the fisherman, who told him what had happened. Suddenly, the little bird in the cage began to sing. "O king of noble blood, your children are back for good, but their mother sits in prison with nothing much to live on. Her sisters are the wicked ones who took your daughter and your sons, and left them on the river's fate, but always hid with the fishermen, for it was much too late." Ugh. Was that sing-songy enough? Honestly, no. When they heard the song, They were all astonished. No kidding. The king took the little bird, the fisherman, and all 3 children and went with him to his castle, where the prison gate was opened and his wife released. However, she had become very sick and was haggard. So the daughter gave her a drink of water from the well, and she regained her health. But the 2 wicked sisters were burned to death, and the daughter married the prince. Okay then. Yeah. Anytime there's a bird in these stories, I'm going to start saying it. Oh, I did that before I even burped. Damn. Really? Excuse me. Ugh. That was painful. That's what I get for drinking soda, right? Anyway. 26 minutes in. Not too bad. Good. Our next story for the night is The Water of Life. Once upon a time, there was a king who became very sick, and nobody believed he would survive. He had 3 sons who were very saddened by this, and they went down into the palace garden, where they all went. All of a sudden, they met an old man who asked them why they were so depressed, and they told him that their father was so sick that he would probably die. Nothing seemed to help. "I know of a remedy," the old man said. "It's the water of life. If he drinks it, he'll regain his health. But it is difficult to find." "Well, we'll find it," said the oldest. And he went to the sick king and requested permission to leave and search for the water of life, for that was the only cure for his illness. "No," said the king. "The danger is much too great. I'd rather die instead." But the son pleaded so long that the king finally gave his consent. Deep down, the prince felt, if I bring him the water, I'll become my father's favorite, shown here in the kingdom. So he set off, and after he'd been riding for some time, he encountered a dwarf, who called to him and said, "Where are you going in such haste?" "You twerp," the prince said contemptuously. "That's none of your business," and he rode on. But the little dwarf became furious and put a curse on him. Meanwhile, the prince found himself traveling through a mountain gorge, and the farther he rode, the more the mountains close together, until they became so narrow that he couldn't proceed. Nor could he turn his horse or get off of his saddle. There he remained confined. Meanwhile, the sick king waited and waited for the prince, but he didn't return. Then the second son said, "Father, let me go and search for the water of life." And he thought to himself, if my brother's dead, then this kingdom will fall to me. At first the king didn't want to let him go either, but he finally gave in. So the prince set off on the same road that his brother had taken, and met the dwarf, who stopped him, and asked him where he was going in such haste. "You twerp," said the prince, "that's none of your business." And he rode off with great arrogance. But the dwarf put a curse on the prince, and he ended up in the mountain gorge, where he couldn't go forward or backward. Indeed, that's what happens to arrogant people. Now, when the second son had also failed to return, the youngest offered to set forth and fetch the water, and eventually the king had to let him go too. After he met the dwarf, and was asked where he was going in such haste, he stopped and answered, "I'm looking for the water of life because my sick father is on the brink of death." "I know where you can find it." "No." "Well, I'll tell you because you've spoken to me in such a polite way. It's gushing from a fountain in the courtyard of an enchanted castle. You won't make your way there unless I give you an iron wand and 2 loaves of bread. You're to knock 3 times on the castle gate with the iron wand, then it will open. Inside, 2 lions lying on the ground. They'll open their jaws, but if you throw a loaf of bread into each of them, they'll be quiet. Then you must hurry and fetch some of the water of life before the clock strikes 12. Otherwise, the gate will slam shut, and you will be locked in. The prince thanked him and took the wand and the bread and went on his way. When he arrived there, everything was just as the dwarf had said. After the third knock, the gate sprung open, and when he combed the lands with the bread, he entered the castle and went into a big, beautiful hall, where he found spellbound princes sitting all around. He took the rings from their fingers and also grabbed a sword and the loaf of bread that was lying on the floor. Then he moved on to the next room, where he encountered a beautiful princess who was delighted to see him. She kissed him and told him that he had set her free and could have the entire kingdom as a reward. If he would return in a year's time, their wedding would be celebrated. Then she also told him where to find the fountain with the water of life. But that he had to hurry and draw the water before the clock struck 12. He went on and finally found the room with a beautiful, freshly made bed, and since he was tired, he wanted to rest a little. Once he lay down, however, he fell asleep. When he awoke, the clock was striking 11:45, and he jumped up in fright and ran to the fountain and drew some water in a cup that happened to be lying on the ledge. Then he rushed outside. Just as he was running through the iron gate, the clock struck 12, and the gate slammed shut so hard that it took a piece of his heel. Nevertheless, he was happy that he had found the water of life, and on his way home he passed the dwarf again. When the little man saw the sword and the bread, he said, "You've managed to gain some valuable things. With the sword you'll be able to defeat whole armies, and the bread will be able to replenish itself." Nice. Then the prince thought, "I don't want to return home to my father without my brothers." And so he said, "Dear dwarf, can you tell me where my two brothers are? They went out looking for the water of life before me, and they never came back." "They're trapped between two mountains," said the dwarf. "I put them there with a magic spell because they were so arrogant." Then the prince pleaded until finally the dwarf decided to release, but not without a warning. "Beware of them," he said. "They have evil hearts." When he was united with his brothers, he was happy and told them all that had happened, how he found the water of life, was now bringing a cupful to their father, how he had rescued the beautiful princess and was going to marry her after a year of waiting, and how he would receive a vast kingdom after their marriage. Once he told all this, they rode on together and came to a country plagued with war and famine. The king was already convinced that he would soon perish because the situation was so desperate. But the prince went to him and gave him the bread, which he used to feed his people and satisfy their hunger. After the prince also gave him the sword, which he used to defeat the enemy armies, he was able to live in peace and quiet. So the prince took back the loaf of bread and the sword, and the brothers rode on. Meanwhile, they passed through 2 other countries plagued with famine and war, and on each occasion the prince gave the king his bread and sword, and in this way he was able to help save 3 kingdoms. Later on, they boarded a ship and sailed across the sea. During the trip, the 2 older brothers began talking with one another and said, "The youngest found the water of life, and we are empty-handed. So our father will give him the kingdom that is by right ours, and our brother will deprive us of our happiness." Overcome by the desire for revenge, they planned to put an end to their brother's life. So they waited until he was sound asleep, poured the water of life from his cup into their own, and replaced it with bitter salt water. When they arrived home, the youngest brought the cup to the sick king and told him to drink it, and all would get well. No sooner had the king drunk those bitter salt waters than he became sicker than ever. As he began to moan, the 2 oldest brothers came and accused the youngest of wanting to poison the king, while they, on the other hand, had brought the true water of life, and they handed it to their father. As soon as he drank some, he felt his sickness on the wane, and became as strong and as healthy as in the days of his youth. After that, the 2 older brothers went to the younger and belittled him. "Oh, we know you found the water of life," they said, "but we're the ones who received the reward for all your trouble. You should have been smarter and kept your eyes open. We took the water from you while you fell asleep at sea, and in a year's time one of us will fetch the beautiful princess. Still, better not to oppose us. Father will not believe you anyway, and if you still breathe a single word about it, your life will be worth nothing. If you keep quiet, we will let you live. The old king was angry at his youngest son, because he believed that his son had wanted to take his life. So he summoned his ministers and ordered them to sentence his son to be shot in secret. So one day, as the prince went out hunting, suspecting no danger, one of the king's huntsmen had to accompany him. When they were all alone in the forest, the huntsman looked so sad. The prince asked him, "Dear hunter, what's the matter?" "I can't say," answered the huntsman, "and yet I should." "Tell me," said the prince. "Whatever it is, I'll forgive you." "Ah," said the huntsman, "the king has ordered me to kill you." The prince was taken aback by this news and said, "Dear huntsman, let me live. I'll give you my royal garments and give you my common ones in exchange." Give me your common ones in exchange. "I'll gladly do that," said the huntsman. "I couldn't have shot you anyway." They exchanged clothes, and the huntsman went home, while the prince went deeper into the forest. After a while, 3 wagons loaded with gold and jewels arrived at the king's castle for the youngest son. They had been sent by the 3 kings who had defeated their armies with the prince's sword, and who had nourished their people with his bread. The wagons were an expression of their gratitude, and when the old king saw that, he began to think, "Perhaps my son was innocent." And he said to the people at his court, "If only he were still alive. Now we regret that I ordered him to be killed." "Then I did the right thing," said the huntsman. "I couldn't bring myself to shoot him." And he told the king what had happened. The king was glad and made it known to all the surrounding kingdoms that his son should be returned and would be restored to favor. In the meantime, the princess had decided to build a glittering gold road that would lead up to her castle. She told her guards that whoever came riding to her straight up the middle of the road would be the right man, and they should let him enter. However, whoever rode up on the side of the road would not be the right man, and they would not let him enter. When the year of waiting was almost up, the oldest son thought that he would get an early start and pass himself off as her savior. Then he would get her to wife and the kingdom as well. So he rode forth, and when he came to the castle, he saw a beautiful road and thought, "It would be a terrible shame if he rode on it." So he turned off to the right and rode along the side. But when he got to the castle, the guards told him that he was not the right man and had better go away. Soon thereafter, the second prince set out, and when he came to the gold road and his horse was with down arms, he thought, "It would be a terrible shame to damage the road." He turned to the left and rode along the side. However, when he reached the gate, the guards told him that he'd better go away, for he was not the right man either. When the year was completely over, the third son prepared to ride out of the forest and hoped to forget his sorrows in the company of his beloved. As he set out, he kept thinking about her and wishing he were with her already. When he arrived to the gold road, he didn't even notice it, and his horse rode right down the middle of it. Once he reached the gate, it opened, and the princess welcomed him with joy. She pronounced him her savior and lord of the realm, and they celebrated their wedding in great bliss. When it was over, she told him his father had sent for him and had pardoned him. So she rode home. Well, he rode home and explained to his father how his brothers had deceived him and why he had kept quiet about it. The old king wanted to punish them, but they had fled on a ship and never returned so long as they had lived. All right then. Should have gotten say it that the third son was probably Ashlad, because youngest kid tends to be Ashlad. Even if they didn't use any names at all in the story. Honestly, they could have used any names they wanted to, but they didn't, which is kind of cool. Anyway, Cubs, We're only 40 minutes in so far. That is craziness. That's 40 minutes and 2 stories. 25 minutes to start at 15 minutes after, but whatever. Our next story for the evening. Dr. Know-It-All. So, just every doctor, I guess. Anyway, Dr. Know-It-All. Once upon a time, there was a poor farmer named Crab, who drove a cord of wood into town with his 2 oxen and sold the wood to a doctor for 2 gold coins. When the farmer went inside to get his money, the doctor was just about to sit down to dinner, and the farmer admired the fine food and drink at the doctor's table. His heart yearned for something like that, and he thought how nice it would be if he were a doctor. He lingered a while, and finally asked if it was possible to become someone like him to become a doctor. Of course, said the doctor. There's not much to it. First, buy yourself an ABC book, kind with a picture of a rooster on it. Second, you must get cash for your wagon and 2 oxen, purchase some clothes, and other things that doctors tend to need. Third, you must have a sign painted with the words, I am Dr. Know-It-All, and nail it above your front door. So much for medical school. Just get yourself an alphabet book with a rooster on it and clothes and a sign. Cool. Anyway, the farmer did everything he was told, and when he had doctored for some time, but not very long, a rich and mighty nobleman was robbed of some money, and he heard about Dr. Know-It-All, who was living in such and such village, and probably know what had become of the money. How would a doctor know that? I don't know. Oh well. Excuse me. So the nobleman had his carriage prepared and drove out to the village and inquired at a farmer's house whether he was Dr. Know-It-All. Or if he was just Dr. Feelgood. No, Dr. Know-It-All. Yes, that was he, the farmer responded. Then the nobleman requested that he return with him and help him get back his stolen money. The farmer agreed, but added that Greta, his wife, had to come along too. Can't leave the wife alone. The nobleman gave his approval, offered them both a seat in his carriage, and they drove off together. When they came to the nobleman's mansion, the table was set, and Dr. Know-It-All was to eat with the lord, but he wanted his wife, Greta, to eat with him too. So they all sat down together at the table. Now when the first servant arrived with a dish of delicious food, the farmer nudged his wife and said, Greta, that was the first. And he meant that was the man who was the first course. With the first course. The man was not the first course, the man was with the first course. But the servant thought he meant, that's the first thief. And since he really was the thief, he got scared and went out to tell his accomplices. The doctor knows everything. There's trouble ahead. He said I was the first. The second servant didn't want to go in, but he had no choice. When he ordered the dish, the farmer nudged his wife and said, Greta, that's the second. The servants too got scared and hurried out. The third fared no better. Again the farmer said, Greta, that's the third. The fourth had to carry a covered dish, but no one asked the doctor to demonstrate his skill, and guess what lay under the cover? Crabs were being served, and when the farmer looked at the covered dish, he had no idea what it was. Finally he blurted out, Poor me, poor crab. When the nobleman heard that, he exclaimed, There, he knows! I'm sure he must also know who has the money. Convenient. The servant was frightened to death and winked at the doctor to step outside for a moment. When he got outside, all 4 servants confessed to him that they had stolen the money. They proposed that he take charge of it and offered a large sum in addition if he would not expose them. Otherwise, they would soon be dangling from the gallows. And then they led him to the place where all the money was hidden. The doctor was satisfied, went back inside, and sat down at the table, and said, Sir, now I intend to look in my book to see where the money's money. Yeah, see where the money's been hidden. In the meantime, the fifth servant had crawled into the stove to see if he could hear what else the doctor knew. As the doctor sat there at the table and opened his ABC book and turned the pages back and forth looking for the rooster, since he couldn't find it right away, he said, "I know you're there. I'm bound to find you." The servant in the stove thought the doctor was talking about him, and he jumped out of the stove, fright, and said, "That man knows everything." And then Dr. Know-It-All showed the nobleman where the money was, but he didn't reveal who had stolen it. As a reward, he received money from both sides and became a famous man. That's not how doctors work. What the hell? Doctors just knowledgeable guys? What is he, Dr. Krabs ABC? Man, that one only took about 6 minutes. Craziness. First beverage is completely gone. Now I'm switching to water. That is loud water. Okay. All right, Cubs, we are on to the fourth story. Kind of going through stories fast now. I don't know if I should slow down. I'm not doing a whale story. I got it last time. Still can't believe there's a whale in that story. What was a whale doing in a pond anyway? Oh well. The next story, I will... Okay. I'm not going to say anything, but I'll just surprise you when I get there, okay? Okay, cool. Anyway, the next story is The Frog Prince. Once upon a time, there was a king who had 3 daughters, and in his courtyard there was a well with very beautiful clear water. On a hot summer's day, the eldest daughter went down to the well and scooped out a full glass of water. However, when she looked in it and held it up to the sun, she saw that the water was murky. She found this very unusual and wanted to scoop out another glass. When a frog stirred in the water, stuck his head up, and finally jumped to the edge of the well, where he spoke. "If you'll be my sweetheart, my dear, I will give you water clearer than clear." "Who'd ever want to be a nasty frog sweetheart?" she cried out and ran away. Then she told her sisters that there was an old frog down at the well and had made the water murky. The second sister... Sorry, now I'm picturing like second sister from Star Wars. Oh, God. Cross stories. Second sister... We went down to the well and scooped out a glass of water for herself. But it was just as murky as her sister's glass. So that wasn't able to be drink. So she wasn't able to drink it. Once again, however, the frog was on the edge of the well, and said, "If you'll be my sweetheart, my dear, I'll give you water clearer than clear." "Do you think that would suit me?" the princess replied, and ran away. Finally, the third sister went. And things were no better. But when the frog spoke, "If you'll be my sweetheart, my dear, I'll give you water clearer than clear," she replied. "Yes, why not? I'll be your sweetheart, and I'll give you some clean water." Okay. Not doing that voice. Sorry. No, I'll keep doing it. However, she thought, that won't do me any harm. I can speak to him just as I please. The dumb frog will never be my sweetheart. Meanwhile, the frog had jumped back into the water, and when she scooped up some water the second time, it was so clear that the sun neatly gleamed with joy in the glass. Then she drank and quenched her thirst, and brought her sisters some of the water. Why are you so simple-minded and afraid of the frog? She said to them. And afterward, the princess didn't think anything more about it, and happily went to bed. However, after she had been lying there for a while, she couldn't fall asleep. She suddenly heard some scratching on the door, and then some singing. Open up, princess youngest daughter. Don't you remember what you said when I sat on the well and in the water? You wanted to be my sweetheart, my dear, and I gave you water clearer than clear. Oh, that's my sweetheart, the frog, the princess said. And since I gave him my word, I'll open the door. I'm sorry, So she got out of bed and opened the door a little, and then lay back down the bed. The frog hopped after her and jumped on the bed, down by her feet, and remained there. When the night was over and the morning dawned, the frog sprang off the bed and went out through the door. The next evening, the princess was once again lying in bed. There was some scratching and singing at the door once more. The princess opened the door, and the frog lay at the bed at her feet again until the next day. On the third evening, the frog came just as he had done the previous evenings. This is the last time I'll open the door for you, the princess said to him. In the future, there will be no more of this. Then the frog jumped and crawled under her pillow, and the princess fell asleep. When she woke up the next morning, she thought the frog would hop away again. Instead, there was a handsome prince standing before her, and he told her that he had been the bewitched frog, and that she had saved him because she had promised to be his sweetheart. Then the two of them went to the king, who gave them his blessing, and a wedding was held. Meanwhile, the two other sisters were angry with themselves because they had not taken the frog to be their sweetheart. I did end up with a frog in my throat. Waka, waka, waka! Okay, enough of that shenaniganery. Maybe. But now the rest of the stories go. Okay, so the next story. The Devil's Sooty Brother. A discharged soldier had nothing to live on and no longer knew what to do with his life. So he went out into the forest, and after walking for a while, he met a little man who was actually the devil himself. What's the matter? The little man said to him. You look so gloomy. I'm hungry, and I have no money, said the soldier. If you hire yourself out to me and be my servant, the devil said, then you'll have enough for the rest of your life. But you've got to serve me 7 years, and after that you'll be free. There's just one other thing I've got to tell you. You're not allowed to wash yourself, comb your hair, trim your beard, cut your nails, or even wipe your eyes. What is it that you truly desire? Sorry. If that's the way it must be, then let's get it on. What? The soldier said, and he went away with the little man, who led him straight to hell and told him what his chores were. He had to tend the fires under the kettles in which the damned souls were sitting, sweep the house clean and carry the dirt out the door, and keep everything in order. However, he was never to peek into the kettles, or things would go badly for him. Soldier going to hell and taking care of things anyway. That seems to be the norm right now. I understand, said the soldier. I'll take good care of everything. So the old devil set out again on his travels, and the soldier began caring for his duties. They put fuel on the fires, swept the floor, and took the dirt outside. When the old devil returned, he was satisfied and went out again. Now, for the first time, the soldier took a good look around hell. There were kettles all about, and they were all boiling and bubbling with tremendous fires under each one of them. He would have given his life to know what was in them if the devil had not strictly forbidden it. Finally, however, he could no longer restrain himself. He lifted the lid of the first barrel and looked inside, only to see his old sergeant sitting there. "Ah, you crumb," he said. "Fancy meeting you here. You used to step on me, but now I've got you under my foot." Wait. Sorry, that's supposed to be the soldier. Oh well. He let the lid drop quickly and stirred the fire, and added fresh wood. After that, he moved to the second kettle, lifted the lid a little, and peeked inside. There sat his lieutenant. "Aha, you crumb. Fancy meeting you here. You used to step on me, and now I've got you under my foot." Shut the lid again, and added a log to the fire to make it really good and hot for him. Now he went to see who was sitting under the third kettle, and it turned out to be his general. "Aha, you crumb. Fancy meeting you here. You used to step on me, and now I've got you under my foot." He took out a bellows and pumped it until the fire of hell was blazing hot under him. And so it was that he served out his 7 years in hell. He never washed, combed his hair, trimmed his beard, cut his nails, or wiped his eyes. 7 years passed so quickly that he was convinced that it was only 6 months that had gone by. When his time was completely done, the devil came and said, "Well, Hans, what have you been doing all this time?" "I've tended the fire under the kettles, and I've swept, and I've carried the dirt out the door." "But you also peeked in through the kettles." "Well, you're just unlucky that you added more wood to the fire. Otherwise, you'd have forfeited your life. Now, your time is up. Do you want to go back home?" "Yes," said the soldier. "I'd like to see how my father's doing." "All right. If you want to get your proper reward, you must go and fill your knapsack with the dirt you swept up, and take it home with you. And you must also go unwashed and uncombed, with your long hair on your head and your long beard, with uncut nails and with bleary eyes. And if anyone asks you where you've come from, you will always got to say, 'From hell.' And if anyone asks who you are, you're to say, 'I'm the devil's sooty brother, who's my king as well.'" Okay. The soldier said nothing. Indeed, he carried out the devil's instructions, but he was not at all satisfied with the reward. As soon as he returned to the world, and he was out in the forest again, he took the knapsack and went to shake it out. But when he opened it, he discovered that the dirt had turned into pure gold. When he saw that, he was delighted and went into the city. The innkeeper was standing in front of his den, and Hans approached. And when he caught sight of Hans, the innkeeper was terrified because the soldier looked so dreadful, even more frightful than a scarecrow. He called out to him and asked, "Where are you coming from?" "From hell." "Who are you?" "The devil's city brother, who's my king as well." The innkeeper did not want to let him inside, but when Hans showed him the gold, he went and unlatched the door himself. Then showed Hans to the best room and insisted on the finest service. He ate and drank his fill, but did not wash or comb his hair, as the devil had instructed. Finally, he lay down to sleep, but the innkeeper could not get the knapsack of gold out of his mind. Just the thought of it left him no peace, so he crept into the room during the night and stole it. When Hans got up the next morning and went to pay the innkeeper, before leaving, his knapsack was gone. However, he wasted no words and thought, "It's not your fault that this happened," and he turned around and went straight back to hell, where he complained about his misfortune to the devil and asked for help. "Sit down," said the devil. "I'm going to wash and comb your hair, then trim your beard, and cut your nails, and wash out your eyes." When he was finished with the soldier, he gave him the knapsack full of dirt again. "Go there and tell the innkeeper to give you back your gold, otherwise I'll come and fetch him, and you'll have to tend the fires in your place." Hans went back up and said to the innkeeper, "You stole my money, and if you don't give it back, you'll go to hell in my place, and you'll look just as awful as I did." The innkeeper gave him back his money and more besides. Then he begged him to be quiet about what happened. Now Hans was a rich man and set out on his way home to his father. He bought himself a pair of rough linen overalls and wandered here and there playing music, for he had learned that from the devil in hell. Once he happened to play before a king in a certain country. The king was so pleased that he promised Hans his oldest daughter in marriage. However, when she heard that she was supposed to wed a commoner in white overalls, she said, "Before I do something like this, I'll drown myself in the deepest lake." Bitch. So the king gave Hans his youngest daughter instead, who was willing to marry him out of love for her father. So the devil's city brother got the king's daughter, and when the king died, he got the whole kingdom as well. Okay, so what is your greatest desire? Anyway, Cubs. That was some details, I guess. Anyway, the next story for this evening. The Devil in the Green Coat. There once were 3 brothers, and the 2 eldest used to push the youngest around. And when they decided to go out into the world, they said to him, "We don't need you. You can go off wandering by yourself." Then they left him, and he set out off all alone. When he came to a large meadow, he was very hungry and sat beneath a ring of trees and began to weep. All of a sudden he heard a roar. When he looked up, the devil came towards him. He was dressed in a green coat and had a cloven foot. "What's the matter?" he spoke. "Why are you weeping?" Then the young man told him his troubles and said, "My brothers have driven me away from them." "Well, I'm willing to help you," replied the devil. "If you put on the green coat, and you'll see that the pockets are always full of money. You just have to dig into the pockets whenever you like. But in exchange for the coat, I demand that you don't wash yourself for 7 years. That you don't comb your hair, that you don't pray. If you die during the 7 years, then you're mine. If, however, you live, then you'll be free. In addition, you'll be rich for the rest of your life." The young man's troubles were so great that they drove him to accept the devil's bargain. So the devil took off the green coat, and the young man put it on. As soon as he stuck his hand in the pocket, he had a handful of money. Now he set out in the world with the green coat, and the first year was good. He could pay for anything he liked with his money, and he was still regarded as a human for the most part. Things became worse the second year. His hair had grown so long that nobody could recognize him, and nobody would give him lodging for the night because he looked so atrocious. As more time passed, the worse it became. However, he gave poor people a lot of money so that they would pray for him and request that he didn't die during the 7 years and fall into the devil's hands. Clever. At a certain point in the 4th year, he came to an inn, and the innkeeper wouldn't let him stay there. However, he took out a heap of money and was willing to pay in advance, so that the innkeeper gave him a room. That evening he heard a loud moaning from the neighboring room, so he went next door and saw the old man standing there. He was crying, complaining about something he told a young man to go away because he didn't want to. He wasn't able to help him then. The young man asked him, however, what was troubling him. The old man told him that he didn't have any money and that he owed the innkeeper a great deal. And now he was being detained until he kept his debt. Paid his debt. The young man in the green coat said, "If that's all it is, I've got plenty of money. I'll pay and you'll be freed of your debts." Now the old man had 3 beautiful daughters, told him to come along with him, and he would give him one of the daughters for his reward. So the young man went with him, and when they arrived at the old man's home, the eldest daughter saw him, and screamed and cried that she would never marry such a hideous man who didn't have human traits and looked like a bear. Hey, nothing wrong with bears. The second daughter immediately ran off, but preferred to set out to the wide world and marry a young man. However, the youngest daughter said, "Dear father, since you promised him and he's helped you get out of trouble, I shall obey you." So the young man in the green coat took a ring from his finger and broke it in two. Then he gave the other half, and he gave her one half, and kept the other for himself. He wrote his name on her half and her name on his half, and told her to keep her half in a safe place. However, he stayed a little while longer with her until he said, "Now, I must go take my leave. I shall be gone 3 years, but be true to me during this time. Then I'll return and we'll celebrate our wedding. If I don't return in 3 years, you'll be free, and I shall be dead. However, pray for me and ask God to protect me." Now, during those 3 years, the two older sisters made a great deal of fun of the youngest and said she couldn't get a real man, she would have to marry a bear. Damn. However, the youngest daughter kept quiet and thought, "I must obey my father, no matter what." In the meantime, the young man in the green coat traveled about the world. He often stuck his hand into his pockets to buy the most beautiful thing he saw for his bride. He didn't do anything evil. Indeed, he only did good deeds. Wherever and whenever he could, gave poor people money so that they would pray for him. So God showed him mercy, and 3 years flew by, and he was healthy and alive. Now that the time was over, he went back to the meadow and sat down under the rooted trees. Once again, there was a tremendous roar, and the devil arrived. He grumbled and viciously threw the young man's old coat at him and demanded the green one in return. Well, the young man was glad to take off the green coat and handed it to the devil. He was now free and rich for the rest of his life, so he went home and cleaned himself and moved on to visit his bride. When he came to the door, the father met him. The young man greeted him and said he was the bridegroom, but the father didn't recognize him and wouldn't believe him. When the young man went to see the bride, she too wouldn't believe him. Finally, he asked whether she still had her half of the ring. She said yes and went to fetch it. Then he took out his half and held it out to hers, and they matched. Now they knew he was definitely the bridegroom, and when she saw that he was a handsome young man, she was very happy and fond of him, of course, and they held the wedding. However, since the two sisters had passed up their chance for happiness, they became so furious that one of them drowned herself on the wedding day, and the other hanged herself. Welcome to the world of Brothers Grimm. That evening, something knocked and banged on the door. When the bridegroom went and opened it, the devil was standing there in his green coat and said, "You see, now I've got 2 souls instead of just yours." Wow. Okay. Not the ending I was expected. Okay, so. Alright, Cubs. Give a second. I need to imbibe water. Okay. I'll wet my over. I just have to read. We're barely an hour into this. Damn. If anyone's lurking, feel free to let me know, because it's nice to know people are out there. What was stuff for? Where are these freaking Pokemon? I don't know. I mean, I know Swablu and Shirley, yeah. No, I'm not sure about that. Anyway. Our next wonderfully probably macabre story. Oh, wait. This one will be a good one. Cool. The Wren and the Bear. Once during summertime, as the bear and the wolf were walking through the forest, the bear heard a bird singing a beautiful song and said, "Brother Wolf, what kind of bird can sing so beautifully as that?" "Ah, that's the king of birds," said the wolf. "We must bow down before him." However, there was nothing but a wren, popularly known as the Fence King. "If that's the case," said the bear, "I'd very much like to see his royal palace. Please take me there." "You can't just go there like that," said the wolf. "You'll have to wait until the queen comes." Soon thereafter, the queen arrived carrying some food in her bill, and the king as well, and they began feeding their young ones. The bear wanted to run right in after them, but the wolf held him by his sleeve and said, "No, you've got to wait until His Majesty and Her Highness have gone away again." So they took note of the place where the nest was and trotted off. However, the bear could not rest until he saw the royal palace, and after a short while he went back to it. The king and queen had already flown away, and he looked inside and saw 5 or 6 young birds lying there. "Is this the royal palace?" exclaimed the bear. "It's a miserable place, and you're not royal children in the least. You're a disgrace." When the young wrens heard that, they were tremendously angry and cried out, "No, we're not. Our parents are honorable people, Bear, and you've got to pay your price for your remarks." The bear and the wolf became frightened. They turned around and went back to their dens and sat. But the young wrens kept crying and shrieking, and when their parents returned with the food, they said, "We're not going to touch so much as a fly's leg until you establish whether you were a disgrace or not. The bear was just here and he insulted us." "Calm down," said the old king. "We'll settle this matter." They flew away with the queen to the bear's den and called, "Hey, you grumbly old bear! Why did you insult my children? You'll pay for this. We'll have to settle this matter in bloody war." So war was declared against the bear, who summoned all 4-legged animals, the ox, the donkey, the stag, the deer, and all those beasts that walk on the earth. To counter this, the wren summoned everything that flies, not only the big and small birds, but also the gnats, hornets, bees, and flies that come too. When the time came for the war to begin, the wrens sent out scouts to discover who all the commanding general of the armed forces was. The gnat was the wildest of all and got to the forest where the enemies had assembled. Then he hid under a leaf on a tree in where the password was to be given out. The bear was standing there, and he called the fox to him. "Fox, you've got the most fly of all the animals. I want you to be our general and lead us in." "Fine," said the fox, "but what shall we use as signals?" Since nobody had any ideas, the fox said, "I've got a nice long bushy tail that looks almost like a red plume. If I lift up my tail, that will mean everything's all right. But you should charge. But if I let it droop, then run for your lives." Once the gnat heard that, he flew back to the wren and reported everything down to the very last detail. At daybreak, when the battle was to commence, the 4-legged animals came thundering with such clatter that the earth began to tremble. And Wren and his army also came flying through the air. They buzzed and shrieked and swarmed so much that everyone in the surrounding area was frightened to death. As both sides attacked, the wren sent out a hornet with instructions to dive under the fox's tail and sting him with all his might. Now, when the fox felt the first sting, he twitched and lifted a leg. But he soon stood his ground and kept holding up his tail. With the second sting, he had to lower his tail momentarily. But by the third sting, he could no longer stand the pain and had to howl and tuck his tail between his legs. When the other animals saw that, they thought it was all lost and began to run, each to his own den. So the birds won the battle. The king and queen flew home to their children and called, Children, rejoice! Eat and drink to your heart's content. We've won the war! But the young Wren said, We're not going to eat a thing until the bear comes to our nests to beg our pardon and say that we're a credit to the family. When the Wren flew to the bear's den and cried out, Hey, you grumbly bear! I want you to go to my nest and ask my children for pardon. You'd better tell them they're a credit to the family, otherwise your ribs will be broken to pieces. On hearing this, the bear became extremely frightened, crawled out to the nest, where he apologized. Now the young Wrens were finally satisfied, and they sat down together and ate and drank, and made merry late into the night. Honestly, Bear. Listen to the wolf. He knows for the protocols, okay? We're part of the council. Oh, yeah. Fun times. Okay, we are an hour and 16 minutes in. Cool. There's a very short one. The Sweet Porridge. Once upon a time, there was a poor but pious girl who lived alone with her mother. When they had nothing left to eat, the girl went out into the forest, where she met an old woman who already knew about her troubles and gave her a small pot. She instructed the girl to say to it, Little pot, cook, for it would make them a good sweet milk porridge. And the girl had to say, Little pot, stop, to make it stop cooking. Not porridge for breakfast, technically. The girl brought the pot home to her mother, and it put an end to their poverty and hunger. From then on, they ate sweet porridge as often as they liked. One day, when the girl had gone out, the mother said, Little pot, cook, and it began cooking. After she had eaten her fill, she wanted the pot to stop, but she had forgotten the right words. So the pot continued to cook, and the porridge ran out over the rim, and proceeded to fill the kitchen, and the whole house, and then the next house, and then the street, as if it wanted to feed the entire world. The situation was desperate, and nobody knew what to do. Finally, when only one house was left standing without any porridge, the girl returned home and merely said, Little pot, stop. It stopped cooking, and whoever sought to go back into the town had to eat his way through. Porridge. I said, I technically had porridge for breakfast. It was good. This porridge, is like pretty much, essentially kind of an oatmeal, just different grains. My particular was, malt. It was tasty. A little bit of sugar, a little bit of butter. Oh yeah. Ugh. It was pretty good. Anyway. Enough about my eating habits. That being said, I have rabbit. I have rabbit thawing for dinner tomorrow. Because rabbit is tasty. So freaking delicious is rabbit. Rabbit is tasty. Anyway. Bunny. Haven't eaten rabbit over a year. I need rabbits. Don't listen to my friends, because they're, rabbits. Anyway, next story. The faithful animals. Because animals are faithful. Anyway, the faithful animals. Once upon a time, there was a man who didn't have much money, and he went out into the wide world with little money that he had left. He arrived at a village where some young boys had gathered together and were making noise and yelling. That's what little boys do. "What's going on?" said the man. "Oh, we've got a mouse," they answered, "and we're making it dance. Just look at the funny way the mouse toddles." But the man felt sorry for the poor little animal and said, "Let the mouse go, boys, and I'll give you money if you do." So he gave them money, and they let the mouse go. The poor animal ran into his hole so fast as it could. The man went off and came to another village. There some boys had a monkey, and they were making the monkey dance and do somersaults. The boys were laughing at the monkey and wouldn't leave it in peace. Once again, the man gave them money to let the monkey go. Afterward, the man came to a third village, where some boys had a bear on a chain. Damn. The bear had to stand on its hind legs and dance, and when it growled, the boys laughed at it even more. Damn kids. The boy bought the bear's freedom as well. The bear was happy to run on his 4 feet again and dashed off. Now the man had given away the last of his money and didn't have a red cent left in his pocket. So he said to himself, "The king has a great deal of money in his treasure chamber. He doesn't need it all. You can't let yourself die of hunger. You might as well go and take some. And if you make money later, you can replace what you take." So, unannounced loan from the king. When he managed to get to the treasure chamber and take some more money. However, as he was creeping out, he was caught by the king's men. They accused him of being a thief and took him to court while he was stealing. Since he had committed a crime, he was sentenced to be put into a box. Then the box was to be cast off into water. Damn. The lid of the box was full of holes so that the air could get inside. Well, that's at least nice of him. In addition, he had been given a jug of water and a loaf of bread. So they're just kind of literally sending him down river. He was floating on the water in a stage of fright. He had heard some fumbling with the lock, and then some gnawing and puffing. All of a sudden, the lock sprang open, and the lid popped open. And there stood the mouse, the donkey, and the bear who had opened the box. Since he had helped them, they wanted to repay him. However, they didn't know what step to take next and began discussing the matter with one another. While they were doing this, a white stone that looked like a round egg came rolling into the water. "It's come just at the right moment," said the bear. "That's the magic stone. Whoever possesses it can wish for whatever he desires." The man fetched the stone from the water, and when he held it to his hand, he wished for a castle with gold, with a garden and stables. No sooner had he uttered the wish than he sat in a castle with a garden and stables. Everything was so beautiful and splendid that he couldn't get over his amazement. After some time, several servants came his way. "Just look," they exclaimed. "What a glorious castle! The last time we came by here, there was nothing but mere sand." Sandcastle. Since they were curious, they went inside and asked the man how he had managed to build everything so swiftly. "It wasn't I who did it," he said. "It was my magic stone." "What kind of stone is it?" they asked. The man went and fetched it and showed it to the merchants. They wanted very much to buy it and asked him to sell it in exchange for their beautiful wares. The man took a fancy to the wares, and since his heart can be fickle and yearn for new things, he let himself be fooled and thought the beautiful wares were more valuable than his magic stone. So he gave it away, and no sooner did it leave his hands than his good fortune disappeared. He sat once more in a locked box on the river with nothing but a jug of water and a loaf of bread. When the faithful animals, the mouse, the donkey, and the bear, saw his misfortune, they came again and wanted to help him. This time they couldn't get the lock open because it was much stronger than the first one. "We've got to get the magic stone back," said the bear, "or everything we try will be useless." Since the merchants were still living in the castle, the animals went there together. As they were approaching it, the bear said, "Mouse, go through the keyhole and tell us what to do. You're small, nobody will notice you." The mouse agreed, but came back and said, "There's nothing I can do. I looked inside, but the stone is hanging on a red ribbon under the mirror. All around it are cats with fiery eyes. I'm stationed there, guarding it." Then the monkey and the bear said, "Go back inside and wait until their master is lying asleep on his bed. Then slip through the hole and crawl on top of his bed and pinch his nose, and bite off some of his hair." And the mouse crawled back inside and did what the others told him to do. The master woke up and rubbed his nose in great annoyance. "The cats are useless," he said. "The mice go right by them and bite off my hair." So he chased the cats away, and the mouse won the day. When the master went back to sleep the following night, the mouse crept inside and nibbled and gnawed on the red ribbon on which the stone was hanging until the ribbon split in two and the stone fell to the ground. Then the mouse dragged it to the house door. However, this was hard work for the mouse, and she said to the monkey who was keeping count, "Pull it through your paw." This was easy for the monkey, and after he took the stone in his hand, they all returned to the river. "How are we going to get to the box?" the monkey said. "I'll deal with that soon enough," said the bear. "I'll get to the water and swim. Monkey, you can get on my back. Hold on to me tightly and put the stone in your mouth. Mouse, you can sit in my right ear." They did what he said and swam down the river. After they had gone some distance, the bear felt it was too quiet and wanted to talk. "Listen, monkey," he said. "I think we're good comrades. What do you think?" However, the monkey kept quiet and didn't reply. "Is that the way to behave?" said the bear. "Won't you give me a comrade in your answer? Some lousy fellow if you don't." Now the monkey could no longer keep quiet. He let the stone fall into the water and cried out, "You stupid fellow! I could not answer you with a stone in my mouth. Now it's lost and you're to blame." "Let's not quarrel," said the bear. "We'll think of something." They discussed the situation, then called together the frogs and toads and all the animals that lived in the water and said, "A powerful enemy intends to attack you. Go and collect the stones you can find. We'll build a wall to protect you." The animals were frightened and brought stones from all over the place. Finally, an old fat croak of a frog emerged from the bottom carrying the magic stone with a red ribbon in its mouth. Now the bear was happy. He relieved the frog of his burdens and told the animals that everything was all right, and sent them home with a quick farewell. And then the three swam down the river to the old man in the box, opened the lid with the help of the stone, and arrived just at the right moment, for the man had consumed the bread and had drunk the water, and was nearly half dead. As soon as he held the magic stone in his hands again, he wished to regain his good health, and be transported to his beautiful castle with the garden and the stables. Then he lived there happily, and the three animals stayed there with him, and had a good life for the rest of their years. Okay. That looks like I've got this 3-part thing of tales about toads. It's toads. Now, let's do tales about toads and say 1, 2, 3 at the beginning of each story, I guess. Okay. Tales about toads. A child sat on the ground in front of a house door with a little bowl of milk and bread nearby and ate. A toad came crawling and dipping its little head into the bowl and ate with the boy. The next day it came again and did the very same thing every day for some days to come. The child took delight in this, and when he saw, however, the toad would only drink milk, leave the bread lying there, the child took his little spoon, hit the toad on the little head, and said, "You thing, eat the bread too." In the meantime, the boy had become handsome and big, and his mother stood right behind him and saw the toad. Then she ran over to them and beat the toad to death. From that time on, the child became emaciated and finally died. Uh, what? Okay. 2. A little orphan girl was sitting on the city wall, spinning when she saw a toad coming towards her. She spread out the blue silk the neckerchief, given to her, but the toads liked to welcome very much. As soon as the toad caught sight of the handkerchief, it turned back, and it soon returned carrying a tiny gold crown. It laid the crown on the kerchief and went away. The girl picked up the crown in her hands. It glittered and was made out of delicately spun gold. The toad soon came back a second time, but when it didn't see the crown anymore, it crawled to the wall and began hitting its head against the wall out of grief. The toad continued doing this until its strength gave out and it finally lay there dead. If the little girl had left the crown lying on the kerchief, the toad would have probably even brought more of its treasures out of the hole. Okay. 3. Called the toad. Come out, said the child. The toad came out, and the child asked about his little sister. Have you seen Little Red Stocking by any chance? No, said the toad. I haven't seen her either. How about you? What? What the hell's that craziness? Toads. I mean, dude. Okay, that's just weird. Okay, cat story coming up. Next story. The Poor Miller's Apprentice and the Cat. Once there were 3 young men who worked in a mill owned by an old miller who lived there without wife or children. After the men had worked for him for some years, he said to them, Go out and see who can bring back the best horse. The winner will get my mill. Now the third of the hired hands was just an apprentice, and the other 2 thought he was a simpleton and didn't deserve the mill. He, in fact, didn't even want it. But he set out with the other 2 workers, and when he came to the village, the 2 men said to simple Hans, Ashlat, whichever you want to go, You might as well stop here. You'll never get a horse as long as you live. But Hans went on with them. And when night came, they arrived at the cave and lay down to sleep inside. The 2 clever ones waited until Hans fell asleep. Then they got up and made off while Hans continued sleeping. They thought they had made a smart move, but just wait. Fortune is not about to shine on them. When the sun rose, Hans woke up. He was lying in the deep cave. He looked around and cried, Oh God, where am I? Then he got up and crawled out of the cave. He went into the forest and began thinking, How shall I ever get a horse? While he was walking and pondering his situation, he met a little multicolored cat. She spoke to him in a friendly way. Where are you going, Hans? Oh, you can't help me. I know quite well what you're looking for, said the cat. You want a fine horse. Come with me and be my faithful servant for 7 years. After that, I'll give you the finest looking horse you'll ever have seen in your life. Then she took him with her in her enchanted castle, where he had to serve her. He chopped wood every day, and she gave him a silver axe, a silver wedge, and a saw, and a copper mallet for his chore. So he chopped the firewood, stayed with the cat, and had plenty to eat and drink. He saw nobody except the multicolored cat. One day she said to him, Go and mow my meadows and dry out the grass. She gave him a silver scythe and a golden whetstone and told him to return everything to the proper condition when he was finished. Hans did as he was told, and when he finished with the work, he brought the hay and returned the scythe and whetstone. Then he asked whether he could now have his payment. No, said the cat. First, you must do one more thing for me. Here, take the wood outside made of silver and an axe and a spear, for everything you need is in silver. I want you to build me a small cottage. So Hans built the cottage, and when it was finished, he pointed out that he had completed his task and still didn't have a horse. Indeed, though it felt like only 6 months, 7 years had passed. So the cat asked whether he would like to see her horses. Yes, said Hans. Then she went to her cottage and opened the door. 12 proud horses were standing there, and their coats were so sparkling bright and shiny that his heart jumped with joy. The cat gave Hans something to eat and drink and said, Now it's time for you to go home, but I'm not going to give you your horse now. I'll bring it with me in 3 days' time. Yeah. The cat showed Hans the way to the mill, and he set out. However, she hadn't given him any new clothes, so he had to keep wearing the old tattered overalls he had been wearing all these years. They had become much too short all over for him. When he reached home, the other 2 hired men were there already. Of course, each of them had brought a horse with them. One horse was blind, and the other lame. Hans, they said, where's your horse? I'm expecting it in 3 days. They laughed and said, Where in the world would you ever get a horse? We can't even see your fine creature. Hans went to the miller's house, but the miller told him he was too ragged and shovel to sit at the table. If anyone happened by, he would disgrace them. So he gave him a little food outside. Then he went to sleep in the evening, and the other 2 hired men refused to give him a bed. Finally, he had to crawl into the goose house, where he lay down with some hard straw. When he awoke the next morning, 3 days were already up, and a coach drawn by 6 horses arrived at the mill. My, how the horses glistened in the sunlight. It was a beautiful sight, and a servant had brought the 7th horse, which was intended for the poor miller's apprentice. Then the gorgeous princess stepped from the coach and went into the mill. This princess was none other than the multicolored cat whom Hans had served for 7 years. She asked the miller where the apprentice was. We couldn't let him sleep in the mill, said the miller. He was too ragged and dirty. He was lying in the goose house. The princess had him fetched immediately, and when they had got him out, he had to hold his overalls together in order to not expose himself. The servant unpacked a bundle of splendid clothes, and then washed him and dressed him. When Hans was ready, no king could have looked more handsome. After this, the maiden demanded to see the horses that the other men had bought. One was blind, the other lame. Then she ordered her servants to bring the 7th horse. When the miller saw it, he said that he had never seen a horse like it in his yard. As for your apprentice, then he must have the mill, said the miller. But the princess said that he could keep his mill, and he could have the horse too. She took her faithful Hans by the hand and led him to the coach, and drove off with him. First, they went to a small cottage they had built with her for the silver tools, but it had become a huge castle, and everything in it was silver and gold. Afterwards, she married him, and he was rich. So rich he had more than enough money for the rest of his life. Remember, don't ever let someone tell you that simpletons never amount to anything. Yeah. Oh, I need to brush up on my feelings, right? Why is no one's here on my fun nights? Oh well. Okay, Hour 40. Cool. I really don't know how many stories I plan on reading tonight. I read several. I will read a couple more. Because I want to hit at least that 2-hour mark. Because, you know, goals. So, if anyone's lurking, let me know, because it's kind of cool to know if people are here. Anyway, Cubs. The next story is The Crows. An honest and diligent soldier had earned and saved money because he had been diligent and had not squandered his earnings in the taverns as the other soldiers had. It so happens that 2 of his comrades were quite devious and wanted to get his money, and so they pretended to be very friendly with him. One day they said to him, "Listen, why should we stay here in the city? We're locked as though we're locked in as though we were prisoners. Besides, someone such as you really earn something decent and live happily if you are in your own company." They kept talking to him like this until finally he agreed to leave with them. However, the other 2 only intended to steal his money. After they'd gone part of the way, the 2 soldiers said, "We must turn right over there if we want to go to the border." "No," he replied. "That leads straight back to the city. We've got to keep to our left." "What?" the other 2 exclaimed. "You always want to have the last word in everything." Then they rushed at him and began hitting him until he fell down. And they took the money out of his pockets, but that wasn't enough. They poked his eyes out, dragged him to the gallows, and tied him up tightly. Whoa, shit. After that, they left him behind and went back to the city with his stolen money. The poor blind man wasn't aware that he had been left in such a terrible place, but groped about and could feel that he was sitting beneath a beam of wood. Since he thought it was the cross, he said, "Well, at least it was good of them to tie me up under a cross. God is with me." He began praying to God. When it was almost night, he heard the fluttering of wings, which turned out to be 3 crows landing on the beam. After that, he heard one of them say, "Sister, what good news have you brought?" "Oh, if only the people knew what we know. The king's daughter is sick. The old king has promised to give her to anyone who can cure her. But no one can do it. Or she'll only get well again if a toad on the pond over there has been burned to ashes, and she drinks ashes from the water." Wow. Then the second crow said, "Oh, if only people knew what we knew. The dew will fall from heaven tonight. There will be such a miraculous and healing powers that the blind will be able to regain their sight if they rub it in their eyes." Finally, the third crow said, "Oh, if only people knew what we knew. The toad can only help one person, and the dew can only help a few. Meanwhile, there's great urgency in the city. All the wells are dried out. Nobody knows if the people removed one square stone from the marketplace and dug beneath that spot, the most beautiful water would gush forth." After the 3 crows finished talking, the blind man heard the fluttering of wings again. They flew away. Gradually, he was able to untie himself. Then he stooped down and pulled a few blades of grass and rubbed his eyes with the dew that had fallen. All at once, he regained his sight. The moon and the stars were high in the sky, and he saw that he was standing next to the gallows. After that, he looked for some earthenware to gather as much of the precious dew as he could find. When he was done, he went to the pond, dug into the water, grabbed hold of the toad, and burned it to ashes. Then he carried the ashes to the king's court, and said the king's daughter needed to take some. When she was restored to health, he demanded her for his wife, as the king had promised. However, the king didn't take a liking to him because he was dressed poorly, and he said that whoever wanted to have his daughter would first have to provide water to the city. In this way, the king hoped to get rid of him. But the soldier went to the city and ordered people to remove the square stone from the marketplace, then to dig beneath it for the spot for water. No sooner had they dug than they hit upon a spring, and a mighty jet of water sprang forth. Now, the king could no longer refuse to give his daughter to him. After the wedding, they lived happily together in a happy marriage. One day, when the soldier was taking a walk through the fields, he met his former comrades who had treated him so disgracefully. They didn't recognize him, but he knew them right away, and he went up to them. "Look," he said, "I'm your former comrade whose eyes you poked out so cruelly. But fortunately, the dear Lord has allowed me to prosper." They fell at his feet and begged for mercy. Since he had a kind heart, he took pity on them and brought them back to the palace. He gave them food and clothes, and afterward told them what had happened and how he had gained such honor. When the two heard this, they were speechless, and eager to spend a night beneath the gallows to see if they, too, could perhaps hear something as good as well. So they went, and they sat under the gallows. Soon they heard the fluttering of wings above their heads, and the three crows arrived. One of them said to the others, "Listen, sisters. Someone must have overheard us, for the king's daughter is healthy. The toad has gone from the pond. A blind man regained his sight, and they've dug a fresh well in the city. Come, let's look for the eavesdropper and punish him." When they swooped down to the beam, they found the two soldiers, and before the men could defend themselves, the crows sat on their heads and hacked out their eyes, and they kept hacking until their faces, too, were dead, and they left them lying beneath the gallows. After a few days, when the soldier had not returned, their former comrade thought, what could those two be wondering about? He went out to look for them, but found nothing except their bones, which he took away from the gallows and buried in a grave. Morbid? A little. Notice there's more ravens and crows, but okay. Okay. This story looks familiar. The next one is Hans, My Hedgehog. Once there was a rich farmer, and he and his wife didn't have any children. When he went into town with the other farmers, they often made fun of him and asked him why he had no children. One day he finally got angry, and when he went home, he said, "I want to have a child, even if it's a hedgehog." Damn. Then his wife gave birth to a child whose upper half was hedgehog and his bottom half was human. Then into Sonic. Died in blue. When he saw the child, she was horrified and said, "See how you've cursed us?" Well, "There's nothing we can do about it now," said the husband. "The boy must be christened, and we'll never find a godfather for him." "There's only one name I can think of him," said the wife, "and that's Hans, my Hedgehog." After he was christened, the pastor said, "He won't be able to sleep in a regular bed because of his quills." Oh, good. That's only those down. Consequently, they gathered together some straw and spread it on the floor behind the stove, and laid Hans, my Hedgehog, on it. His mother couldn't nurse him because he might have stuck her with his quills. So he laid behind the stove for 8 years, and eventually his father got tired of him and wished he would die. But he didn't die. He just kept lying there. One day there was a fair in town, and the farmer decided to go to it and asked his wife if she wanted anything. Some meat and a few rolls, she said. That's all we need for the house. Then he asked the maid, and she wanted a pair of slippers and a hand-sewn stockings. Wow. Finally, he went to his son. Hans, my hedgehog, what would you like to have? Father, he said, just bring me back some bagpipes. Okay, bagpipes. When the father returned home, he gave his wife the meat rolls that he had bought. Then he handed the maid the slippers and hand-sewn stockings. Finally, he went up behind the stove and gave Hans, my hedgehog, his bagpipes. Upon receiving the bagpipes, he said, Father, please go to the blacksmith and have him shoe my rooster. Then I'll ride away and never come back. Ridiculous, folks. The father was happy at the idea of getting rid of him and his rooster shot, and had his rooster shot. When the rooster was ready, Hans, my hedgehog, mounted it and rode away, taking some donkeys and pigs with him, which he wanted to send out in the forest. Once he reached the forest, he had the rooster fly him up into a tall tree. There he sat and tended the donkeys and pigs. Indeed, there he sat for many years until the herd was very large. He never sent word to his father about his whereabouts. As he sat in the tree and played his bagpipes and made some beautiful music, one day a king who had lost his way in the forest came riding by. When he heard the music, he was so astonished that he sent his servant around to see where the music was coming from. The servant looked around, but all he could see was a small animal sitting up in a tree. That seemed to be a rooster with a hedgehog sitting on top of it, playing music. The king told the servants to ask the creature why he was sitting there, and whether he knew his way back to the king's country. Hans, my hedgehog, climbed down from the tree and said he would show the way to the king, and promised in writing to give him the first thing he met at the castle courtyard when he returned home. Okay, this is just going all over the place. I know the way! Oh, freaking A. No danger in that, thought the king. Hans, my hedgehog, can't understand writing, so I can write whatever I want. Okay, the guy has closed word back. He took a pen and ink and wrote something down. And after he had done this, Hans, my hedgehog, showed him the way, and the king arrived home safely. When his daughter saw him coming from afar, she was so overcome with joy that she ran out to meet him and kissed him. Then he thought of Hans, my hedgehog, and explained to her what had happened. He had been forced to make a promise in writing to a strange creature who had demanded to have the first thing he met upon returning home. The creature had been sitting on the rooster, as though it was a horse, and been playing beautiful music. The king told his daughter that he had, however, written down that Hans, my hedgehog, was not to get what he demanded. Anyway, it made no difference because he couldn't read. The princess was happy to hear that, and said it was a good thing, since she would never have gone with him anyway. Hans, my hedgehog, continued tending his donkeys and pigs. He was always cheerfully sitting in the perched tree playing his bagpipes. Now it happened that another king came driving by with his servants and couriers. He too had lost his way, and the forest was so large that he couldn't find his way back. He too heard the beautiful music from afar and told the courier to go and find out what it was. So the courier came to the tree and saw the rooster sitting there, Hans, my hedgehog, sitting on his back, and the courier asked him what he was doing up there. I'm tending my donkeys and pigs. What can I do for you? The courier asked him whether he could show them the way back out of the forest, since they were lost and could make it back to their kingdom. Hans, my hedgehog, climbed down from the tree with his rooster and told the old king that he would show him the way if the king would give him the first thing he met when he returned home to the royal castle. The king agreed and put it in writing that Hans, my hedgehog, was to have what he demanded. When that was done, Hans, my hedgehog, rode ahead of him on the rooster and showed him the way. The king reached his kingdom safely, and as he entered the courtyard, there was great rejoicing. His only daughter, who was very beautiful, ran towards him and embraced him. She was very happy to see her old father again, and asked him what in the world that had kept him so long. He told her that he had gotten lost along the way, and would not have made it back, had it not been for a strange creature. Half human, half hedgehog, who had happened to help him find his way from the forest. The creature had been sitting astride a rooster up in a tall tree and had been playing beautiful music. In return for his aid, the king had promised him to give him the first thing he met when he got to the castle courtyard. Now he was very sorry that it happened to be her. However, out of love for her father, the princess promised him that she would go with Hans, my hedgehog, whenever he came. In the meantime, Hans, my hedgehog, kept tending his pigs, and the pigs had more pigs. And eventually, there were so many that the entire forest was full of them. Hans, my hedgehog's hogs. Then Hans, my hedgehog, sent word to his father to clear out all the pigsties in the village, for he was coming with such a huge herd of pigs that anyone who wanted to slaughter one could have his pick. On hearing this, his father was distressed, for he had believed that Hans my hedgehog had long been dead. Nevertheless, Hans my hedgehog mounted his rooster and drove his pigs ahead of him into the village, and ordered the slaughtering to begin. Whew. That's actually there. Whew. There was such chopping and butchering that a noise could be heard from miles around. Afterward, Hans my hedgehog said, "Father, have the blacksmith shod my rooster one more time. Then I'll ride away and never return as long as I live." So his father had the rooster shod, and was glad that Hans my hedgehog didn't want to return again. Now, when Hans my hedgehog departed, he set out for the country of the first king, whom he had helped. But the king had given his men orders to stop anyone who was riding on a rooster and playing bagpipes from entering the castle. That's kind of limiting of a restriction. If necessary, they were to use their guns, spears, or swords to stop him. So, when Hans my hedgehog came riding, they attacked him with their bayonets, and he put spurs on his rooster, and the bird rose into the air and flew over the gate. Storm brewing up outside. Aren't you glad you're inside with cozy fire? And landed on the ledge of the king's window. He called to the king to keep his promise and give him the princess. Otherwise, he would take his life and his daughter's as well. When the king implored his daughter with the best words he could use to go with Hans, my hedgehog, to save their lives. So she dressed herself all in white, and then her father gave her a coach with 6 horses, splendid servants, money, and property. She got into the coach and was followed by Hans my hedgehog, with his bagpipes and his rooster by his side. They said goodbye and drove away. The king thought that was the last he would ever see of his daughter, but things happened much differently from how he thought they would. When they had gone a little ways from the city, Hans my hedgehog took off the princess's beautiful clothes, stuck her with his quills until she was covered with blood. "That is what you get for being deceitful," he said. "Go away, I don't want you." Damn. Then he chased her home, and she lived in disgrace for the rest of her life. Damn. Meanwhile, Hans my hedgehog took his bagpipes, got on his rooster, and continued his journey towards the second kingdom, which belonged to the other king, whom he had led from the forest. However, the king had ordered his men to present arms. to allow Hans the Hedgehog to enter and greet him, shouting, "Long may he live!" After that, they were to escort him to the royal palace. When the king's daughter saw him, she was frightened because he looked so strange. However, she thought there was nothing she could do, for she had promised her father to go with him. Therefore, she welcomed Hans my Hedgehog, and had to go with him to the royal table, where she sat next to him. And then they ate and drank. When evening came and it was time to go to bed, she was very much afraid of his quills, but he said not to fear it because he had no intention of harming her. Then he told the old king to have 4 men stand watch in front of the bedroom door and to make a big fire, for when he got inside and prepared to go to bed, he would slip out of his hedgehog skin and leave it in front of the bed. The men were to rush in quickly and throw the skin on the fire and stand there until it was completely extinguished. When the clock struck 11, he went into the room, slipped off the hedgehog skin, and left it on the floor next to the bed. But right after this, the men came in, picked up the skin, and threw it into the fire. When the fire had consumed it, he was set free and lay in bed like a human being, but he was pitch black, as if he had been burned. The king sent for his doctor, who rubbed him with special ointments and balms. Gradually, he became white and turned into a handsome young man. Excuse me. When the princess saw that, she was very happy. The next morning they got up in a joyful mood and had a fine meal. Then the wedding was held, and Hans my Hedgehog was given the kingdom by the old king. For some years had passed. The young king took his wife and drove her to visit his father. He told the old man that he was a son. The father, however, said he had no son, though he had one once, but he had been born with quills like a hedgehog and gone off into the world. Then Hans my Hedgehog revealed himself to his father. The old man rejoiced and went back with him to his kingdom. So they burnt his hedgehog skin and bleached him. Okay, yeah, I'll go with that. Okay. It is over the 2-hour mark, which that tends to happen. So, thank all you Cubs for listening and everything else. I'm going to one more very short story, and then we will call it for the night before I get to one that's, I guess, could be considered racially charged. Anyway, I will this last one, since it's at the 2-hour mark, and that is typically my goal for these story times. So this one is The Little Shroud. Mother had a little boy of 7 who was handsome, and she loved him more than anything in the world. But all of a sudden he died. The mother couldn't stop grieving, wept night and day. Not long after, the boy was buried. He began to appear at night in places he had formerly sat and played when he had been alive. Then, whenever the mother wept, he would weep too, and when morning came, he would disappear. Since his mother wouldn't stop her weeping, he came one night clad in a little white shroud that he had worn in his coffin, with a wreath on his head. He sat down at her feet on the bed and said, "Oh, Mother, please stop weeping. Otherwise I won't be able to get to sleep in my coffin. My little shroud is all wet from the tears you've been shedding on it." Upon hearing this, his mother became frightened and stopped weeping. The next night, the child came again with a light in his hand and said, "You see, Now my shroud is almost dry, and I can rest in my grave. Then his mother commended her grief to the dear Lord, and bore it silently, patiently. And the child never returned after was slept in his little bed beneath the ground. Okay. This one's a bit creepy. At least it kind of had a moral. Yeah. So successfully made the 2-hour mark. Didn't get any signs that anyone came in. So let's see who we can raid. Uh-oh. There's another one of the... Is he on? There's Tim's connection now. Come on. Load up. Tell me when it comes on. So... Yes, he's on. Cool. If anyone's there... Yeah, damn it. This is Cub that I've been really trying to help him get affiliated. Because he's been doing this a whole lot longer than I have. He's not a VTuber. But don't hold that against him. Honestly, he's been wanting to get affiliated so we can kind of get money from this so he can help his parents pay bills. If you can follow him, please do. He's a good kid. I'll say that. And I've been trying to help him as much as I can. I am one of his mods. But really, just help the kid out. He deserves it. Again, I don't know if I've got anyone here, but, you know, as I said, I'm out for him and really just want to help him out. Said he's been doing this well longer than I have because I've been following him for a while. So if you're following me, follow him, help him out. He's a good kid. Okay? So have a good night, everyone. Sweet dreams.